The Sentinel remembered something in a dream that night. His dream took him back to the end of the war, and he relived the moment. At the simultaneous beginning and end of the Galactic War, Mars and Ilios collided in an explosive event caused by the Sentinel in his fifth incarnation. The ruins of Ilios and Mars were teleported through wormholes millions of years in the past for their destruction. Of course, the fifth Sentinel didn't know at the time what would come of the destruction of the two planets. The wormhole screamed with spatial energy as it closed, and the planets fused together effortlessly. The fifth Sentinel was trapped in the middle, watching as planets collapsed around him and as his shield dug through their cores. Watching as Rogar disintegrated, as what seemed to be a trail of plasma followed his body as it disappeared into space. When the Sentinel made it through the two planets and came out of the other side, floating aimlessly in space, he saw what he had inadvertently created. When he left the planets alone, for millions of years they swirled in place and smashed together time and time again. The indestructible core of Calcarus from Ilios was separated from its planet and surrounded the fused corpses of the other two. A bright yellow Calcarus moon orbiting an Earth-sized rocky planet, waiting for the Sentinel to return. His pocket watch time machine used to work, and he employed it to survey the planet in its infancy throughout his time living in London. He would wait until he was ready to visit again to apply his finishing touches. Morning came quickly, and the Sentinel awoke in his hospital with a brand new arm. Vax was awake, sitting in a chair by him. "Oh, good, you're up." "Vax? Why are you still here?" the Sentinel asked. "Just waiting for you to wake up, let the nurses know, and I can take you home." A nurse entered the room and unplugged the Sentinel from everything he was hooked up to. They gave him his clothes back. They had cleaned them up relatively well, but his sleeve was still torn. He stood up and put everything on, ready to go. "Thank you." He nodded at Vax with his lips pursed in an awkward smile. "We'll be in contact?" Vax gestured to the box in his palm. "I'll call you." She nodded. The Sentinel waved an awkward wave and flashed away. "I've been meaning to ask you," Quinn said to the Sentinel later that day in the lab. "The purple fire stuff..." "Plasma," the Sentinel explained. "It lives inside me. I can control the stuff in any form of matter, so can Vax. It's basically magic." "Is that normal, what you guys can do?" "No." The Sentinel smiled, holding back a laugh. "No, it's very abnormal, even from the Andromedans' point of view," he explained. "Conchna only exists because the Andromedans tried to clone me for my powers. They just ended up with him. He doesn't look much like you." "I was different back then." The Sentinel sighed. "And then Conchna cloned himself a ton. He made like 1 billion clones and then just killed them all for no reason. Foxtrot and Agro are the only ones left." The Sentinel stared at his new prosthetic as he spoke. "Oh." Quinn stared at his arm. "Sentinel, when are you going to stop practicing with your new arm and start actually doing stuff again? I mean, look, having a stable place to stay is cool and all, but when I'm stuck with a time traveler that doesn't even time travel..." Quinn was tired of waiting. She put up with the Sentinel during the weeks he was adjusting to his new arm, but he seemed so comfortable with it now that it was silly to Quinn that he'd need any more practice with it. She spoke down to the Sentinel, leaning against an open doorway to the backyard where the Sentinel practiced. "One trip and suddenly you want to go places?" The Sentinel teased. "I saw things I can't explain. You're a lot more than I expected or even believed, so you can't blame me for being curious as to what else you have in store." The Sentinel turned around. "Alright, you make a good point." He adjusted his coat, which sat lopsided on his shoulders. "I've actually had my eye on a place to visit for a while now, and if you're looking for strange and unexplainable, should be perfect for you." "Where?" "A planet I call Amalga-5. It's been waiting for me as well. I figure it's about time I apply the finishing touches." "What do you mean?" Quinn stepped inside. "You make it sound like you made the planet or something." The Sentinel made his way through the door. "I created the planet, actually, yeah. Indirectly, but still." "How?" Quinn followed him to the kitchen. "What are you? And here I thought you were just a guy." "I blew up Mars, pushed it through a wormhole." "Oh?" "And combined it with a planet called Ilios. It surprised me how quickly the planet formed. Just in a few million years, a moon and everything, even water. I wanted to visit in the present, this present." "Life?" Quinn wondered. "Not yet." The Sentinel smiled, holding up a small machine he retrieved from the kitchen. It was shaped like a cube with a small blue circle on top, and green patterns across the bottom. It was the machine he made with Starlock while living in London. "You really like cubes and circles, huh?" Quinn smirked. "It just works." The Sentinel placed his prosthetic arm with the box in his palm on Quinn's shoulder, and the two of them flashed away. As they appeared on Amalga-5's surface, their shoes sunk into the dark brown ground beneath them. Several mountains blocked the blue-gray horizon. They were in some type of valley. The sky directly above was dark and lacking in atmosphere. The sun looked like nothing more than a distant dot. On the horizon's edge between two mountains sat the large yellow moon. The Sentinel cracked his back and held out his strange cube. "I really hope this works. I haven't tested it at scale yet, and I built it with supplies I could find lying around in the 1800s, so..." The Sentinel pressed a button on top of the cube, and he quickly formed a shield around himself and Quinn. The cube began to fill the valley with water, quicker than Quinn could process. The valley filled completely with water, and the Sentinel watched happily. He walked around and Quinn followed. The shield displaced water around them, allowing them to walk peacefully underneath the brand new ocean. Clouds appeared in the sky, almost instantly draining themselves by raining onto the dirt of the planet. The ground beneath them rumbled. Quinn could see that it was something the Sentinel wasn't planning or even expecting as a side effect. Sentinel, what was that? Quinn looked down underneath them. No idea. The Sentinel turned quickly, following a louder rumble, muffled by the ocean water and the shield. A large blue and white worm burst itself from the ground, blasting itself through the water. The Sentinel squinted, trying to get a good look at the creature. The hell is that? Quinn yelled, staring at the creature as it burst through the ocean's surface and continued into the sky. The Sentinel flashed away, Quinn in hand, and they appeared on the young beach. They watched as several more worms burst from the ground and flew into space. One of the worms crawled onto the beach, near them. The worm set down a massive sack of eggs that beamed with blue electric sparks, and it promptly flew off into space, leaving them behind. The Sentinel stepped forward but stopped when he saw a squirming worm on the other side of the beach. Sentinel, what is going on here? I don't know everything, I'm trying to figure it out too, give me a second. The Sentinel stepped closer, but stopped instantly when the worm screamed at him, and transformed before his eyes. It shortened, and its folded blue skin left behind from its long body shortening split into several tentacles surrounding its false eye. Terrors. The Sentinel stepped back, fearful. You have disturbed our breeding ground, Sentinel. The terror drone spoke down upon the Sentinel, projecting its words into his mind with a different voice than the Sentinel was used to. How do you know me? We are a hive mind. We share our knowledge. The terror's voice drifted through the Sentinel and Quinn's minds peacefully and non-intrusively. We do not seek trouble with you. Not now. Why here? What happened to Titan? The Sentinel asked. Sentinel, what is happening? Quinn whispered. Shh, he responded. The terror hives moved off Tornlazor to several planets and moons throughout the galaxy. The terrors of Saturn's Hive 1 have gone into hiding. We are Hive 2. We are not the same terrors that fought with you not long ago. Our hive moved here, but we'll be on the lookout for another place to breed. We see we are not wanted here. The terror began to turn around. What happened to Hive 1? Not that I want them back, I much prefer you so far. Their hive mind has passed on. It was replaced with a new one. She felt the pain of the war and pulled out of it at the very end. She's more understanding, and has moved past a path of vengeance for the late Kranthar. Evacuate to the moon, it's not too far, it shouldn't be too inconvenient for you guys. The Sentinel pointed to the sky. We read your mind. That is where we are headed. Thank you, Sentinel. No, thank you. The Sentinel smiled and watched as the terrorists fled, carrying the eggs with them. He was pleasantly surprised, and Quinn was genuinely confused. Not used to things going well for me. Usually something bad happens the second I show up to a place, the Sentinel said. Who are you? Quinn asked the Sentinel, laughing. She walked down the beach and the Sentinel followed her. I don't know anymore. And, I think that's fine not knowing. It's okay sometimes, I think. In general, not knowing, I mean. Keeps you on your toes. The Sentinel watched the center of the new ocean carefully. Down in the depths it glowed from where the machine was placed. Instantly, the ground around them was overrun with foliage. Quinn jumped at the transition and watched in awe as trees sprung up from seemingly nowhere. Ferns unwound themselves and pointed up toward the sky. Vines crawled up the towering trees, and roots of the trees buried deeply into the fresh soil. Brightly colored flowering plants extended past the shoreline. The sky suddenly flooded with blue, and the light from the nearest star filled the sky. The Sentinel could see Quinn was confused and began to answer her question before she even asked it. Terraforming cube. All of its supplies were gathered moments before a mass extinction on Earth. The Sentinel crossed his arms behind his back and watched the sea. Which extinction? Quinn stared out into the open water. The extinction of the dinosaurs? So, these plants? Quinn looked around. They aren't growing. They're being replanted, moved from Earth. These plants are from millions and millions of years ago. And the animals? The Sentinel turned around. A herd of massive, clunky-looking herbivorous dinosaurs sauntered by on all fours. Quinn stepped back, startled, and held onto the Sentinel's false arm. She gasped. Why? The Sentinel smiled. I try to save as much as I can whenever possible. Protecting things is in my blood. I saved as many humans as I could from the end of the world, relocated them, and I saved the dinosaurs. Okay, but Quinn couldn't help but stare. Why? Dinosaurs are cool, the Sentinel scoffed. That's another reason. Well, and I did this to test if it was possible to go and save those that were left on Earth when I destroyed it. The Sentinel looked down at a readout on a little panel, but the success rate is too low. This process is not lossless. It needs more work before I can go back and save everyone that was left behind. One of the dinosaurs at the front of the herd turned its head toward the Sentinel. It opened its mouth and let out a drawn-out honk as it stood on its hind legs. It then continued walking. The rest of the herd followed and honked, almost as if in agreement. You're welcome, the Sentinel whispered. Quinn smirked, trying not to laugh, but she couldn't hold it in. She punched the Sentinel in the shoulder and chuckled. I can't believe you. Come on, you can't tell me this isn't exciting. Dinosaurs! Giant floaty space worms that just happen to know me because of a hive mind? You aren't even questioning how this terraforming stuff even works. This is borderline magic. I made a planet for crying out loud, and look! The Sentinel pointed up at the moon, resting on the horizon. I made that too! It's just funny. Quinn smiled, staring at the moon. I can't really put together who you are. Everyone in the city talks about you like you're some sort of legend. They talk about war stories, first-hand accounts, space monsters. When I travel with you, I see politics, diplomacy, and anger. I see sadness. You're empty. And yet the more time I spend with you, it's like none of that ever happened. It's like you're a kid or you're in denial, desensitized to the world around you. Who are you? The Sentinel sighed, looking down at the ground. He picked up a stone and began to thread it through his fingers. I am who I need to be. Simple as that. And who's that? Quinn was quick to question. The Sentinel. He held out his metallic arm, waiting for Quinn to place her hand on his. She offered her hand, and they flashed away, back to the lab.